you seen an evolution in how teams run the ball in this conference?
So I think the perception, the national perception for the Big 12 for a long time, and it was earned, is it's wide open, throw it every down. But if you look at most trends in football, they're cyclical, right? Is there's not a whole lot of different or new ideas. They're just things that maybe age that come back around. And I think that's what you're seeing is now, like, there's a lot of the principles of running the football that are single wing. And there's a lot of wing T concepts that people are doing from the shotgun that are not necessarily anything that's innovative. It's different than what people were doing when air raid was really the kind of the flavor of this conference. But this is very much a league right now that's won on both line of scrimmages. You got to be able to run the ball. You got to be able to stop the run. And this is a league that the special teams is really kind of, people don't talk about it as much, but this is a really well coached league in special teams, and we have some of the best specialists in the country. And so I think what the outside perception is, and I think the 4 teams in the league, the new teams last year found this out, and now the league, or the teams that are coming in are probably going to know this is a physical, run the ball, stop the run league.
When you, to run the ball as well as you want to run it, do you need 2 running backs and a run threat at quarterback like the guys you have, or what does that allow you to do when you have 3 guys who are such huge run threats on your roster?
Well, I think that most of the top running teams in the country have a dual threat quarterback just because you can keep people honest. I think the other thing that people are doing a lot now is what I refer to as splitting the defense. You'll have some kind of pass, screen option, or a wrong way run going one direction and your base concept run going the other. And so those are some things that people are doing. I think offensive football, and I said this on the big stage too, it's about getting your playmakers the ball. And so what's the best way to get on the ball? Having 2 running backs, that's not a problem. You look at the days where you give one guy 35, 40 carries, it doesn't work. I always think about running backs is like tires, right? There's only so much tread that you can wear out. And we feel like that both of our guys are NFL players, and the last thing we want to do is wear out their tread in college, right? And so there's plenty of carries to go around between Jaheim, between CJ. There'll be a 3rd running back that whoever wins that competition will get into the mix and get some touches. We're going to use Rodney Gallagher in the run game. We're going to use some different receivers in the run game as well. So that I think that's a benefit. I don't necessarily think that's an issue.
I wanted to get your thoughts on Utah and the job Kyle Whittingham's done there.
One of the best coaching jobs over the last 15 years, in my opinion. What they've been able to do. They come into the league, the question a minute ago was about, being a physical run first league. They really brought that to the Pac-12, and they were at the top of the league for a really long time. And just watching them from afar, never played Utah, just getting to know coach, like in our meetings that we had back in May, but a program that I've always had a high level of respect for because how physical they ran the football and how well they played on defense.
There aren't a lot of teams in this conference that are willing to play 2 power conference teams out of conference like you guys are. Does that help or hurt you guys in the long run?
I think it's probably, first of all, I didn't do that, so like it's not I'm split on this, right? It puts us at, as the head football coach, it puts us at a competitive disadvantage because everybody else isn't doing it. We play 9 league games. All the leagues don't play 9 conference games. And then we're playing 2 rival opponents the last several years. In 5 out of the 6 years, that we've been in West Virginia, we've played 11 Power 4 now conference opponents, or Power 4 opponents, which, it puts us at a competitive disadvantage, again, because everybody else is not doing it. But I do get it from a fan's perspective, too. We are the furthest team in the Big 12 East. We still are, but at least we have a regional opponent now in Cincinnati. But we're still far. So it's important from a fan perspective to be able to play these regional rivalries. And we've been able to do that. We've played Maryland. We've played Virginia Tech. We've played Penn State. We've played Pitt, right? And so that's really good from our fan perspective. Now, what I think the best formula for us moving forward is to play 7 home games every year, which every other year we've missed that opportunity. 7 home games, you play a G5 and FCS, and then one of those regional rivalries, then you play your 9 conference games.
Going back to the run thing, the cycles,
yeah.
You committed a young offensive line. Your quarterback play have been better early on. Did you kind of lean into this? Could you see the cycle coming back and think maybe I can match up the development with the trend? Like,
No,
it does seem like it's clipped a little bit.
Yeah, so what I would say is, going back to then, it was more about, from a quarterback perspective, what was on the roster and what we could get, and then trying to make the most of those. And I really feel like that Jarrett Dagey at times played really, really well for us. And I think he gets underappreciated just because we weren't good enough around him. And he had to deal with some really young offensive line, and so that's not totally fair to him. But as the league started to change, and as I got a better feel for who we needed to be successful at West Virginia, it became crystal clear that, first of all, we needed a dual threat quarterback, and then second of all, we needed to build the offense around a dual threat quarterback, and then how do we take advantage of the speed we have, because we have speed. And it's about, going back as an offensive football coach and really studying and how can we spread the field and really kind of get our guys in one-on-one situations. To me, that's the part of the play caller or the scheming is how do you get your best players in one-on-one situations.
When you have an offensive philosophy like that with the dual threat quarterback and then you have a guy with Garrett's skill set, when it comes to running, do you hold yourself back at all, call him plays? If we don't want to run him too much, do you hold him back at all when he has scrambling situations, or do you just, that's in your skill set, we're going to let it rip if it's their taking?
Yeah, so I think with Garrett, what we've learned to do is you just got to let him play. And sometimes he plays a little reckless, and you just have to be okay with that. His decision making has got considerably better. He's off the cuff guy. He's not I wish he slid more. I wish he ran out of bounds more. But if I try to control that, one of the things that's best about him is his competitiveness and the chip on his shoulder that he plays with. And so if you try to really tame that, man, you're really taming what his best qualities are. And so that's not fair to him. And so is he going to run the ball? Yes. Do I hold my breath sometimes that he gets hit a little bit more than I would like? Yes. But in the long run, I think that really would limit him as a player if I try to put controls on him.
And so when you have a player who has that, you said a little bit reckless at times, but he matures, he gets older. Sometimes that's very intriguing of a guy who's got that, he'll let it rip, but now he's learned all the lessons. Like, what could be out there for him when he's a veteran, mature guy with the reckless gene?
Yeah, he's gotten better, and his decision-making has gotten better. If you look at him, he threw 16 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions last year. So his decision-making got quite a bit better. Now the step for him is he's got to go and be more of an efficient passer, and that's really what we've been working with him from a fundamental standpoint.
Coach, back to scheduling for a second. In terms of the league schedule, I believe you play the teams ranked 2 through 6 this season. What type of an opportunity does that present in the conference season?
Yeah, you can't look at the preseason because who knows, right? But we do. We play a challenging schedule. We don't ease into it at all. Obviously, Penn State, but then we host Kansas, I think week 4, right? And Lance has done a tremendous job there at Kansas. Jalen Daniels is electric. He put on a show last time they were in Morgantown. That's a game that I'd love to forget. And they've got Devin Neal. They've done a really good job schematically, offensively, doing some of the things we were just talking about spreading people out, getting them in one-on-one situations. And then defensively, they played really good football toward the end of the year last year. And then we got to go to Stillwater, and it's this league, week in and week out, man. The great thing is you're going to have a chance to win. The bad thing is you're going to have a chance, everybody's good enough to beat you, right? And so you got to be able to navigate that and be able to win close football games. But this is an extremely deep league. Our schedule's tough. But I think everybody in our league is going to, once they get into conference games, it's tough.
Sticking with the schedule here for a second, when you really don't ease into a season, you've got 2 big games in the non-conference, then you go right into it with conference play. I'm assuming then you don't have to get creative with motivation in the preseason. It's just, hey, the task is in front of you, right?
Yeah, what we've got to do a better job of, I thought our guys were ready to play last year. We just didn't execute at a high enough level to win the game at Penn State. what we've got to do and where we spend a lot of time on is, man, how do we play better in that first game? And so we're not easing into it. So we're going to have a little bit more physical camp. We're going to put more emphasis on our early scrimmages, maybe go a little bit longer, do some more high-speed special teams work to get us ready for that game. And that's part of, every time as a coach, every year, you go back to the evaluation. What can I do better? What do we need to do better? And one of the things that I felt like we need to do better is we played really well at the end of the year, and that's been really for almost the entire tenure. We played really well, and I'm talking about as a head coach, we played really well at the end of the year. But how do we come out of the gates faster week one? And that's something we spend much time on.
Coach, what do you think about the addition of sideline tablets, and how is that going to change your game planning and also in-game adjustments?
There's going to be quite a bit of planning that goes into that. That's a big – the coach to player is a big change, but the tablet's probably bigger. And so there's the logistics of it and the communications of it and how to use it. And I think the teams that take the most advantage of it are going to benefit. But it's not something you're just going to show up on game one and go, okay, we got tablets, let's use tablets. No, I mean, like, we used them, we're going to use them in practice. We're going to use them in our scrimmages. And it's going to be trial and error, because as I sit here right now on July 10th, I don't have a great answer for you. I know what our system's going to be basically, but we're going to have to trial and error in practice and in the scrimmages, figuring out the best way to communicate. And then the last thing that you want to do is overcomplicate it. We don't want to give our kids too much data or the coaches too much data. So how do we get that streamlined to information that we can use to make us better?
Hey, you said whenever you figured out the preseason goal last year, you're on the lake, your vacation got ruined. Where were you when you figured out this year?
I was at the beach both times.
Okay.
And it's the poll's what it is. And like last year, my point was it wasn't good research because our offensive line, our defensive line had a lot of production coming back. And I was more pissed than anything just because I was like, it's kind of a lazy narrative. But, this year it's kind of, I feel for the media have to do the predictions because everybody's roster is so much different. So nobody really knows because most people's rosters, 35-40% of it's different than it was a year ago. And so you don't really know. And there's so many dynamics now that go into these team sport, right? And I'm talking about personality, conflicts, all this kind of stuff. There's just more dynamics than there's ever been. And so you don't really know. I firmly believe this, that we have a team that can compete for a Big 12 championship. And our goal is to be pushing towards Dallas late in November. And I believe if we can stay healthy, we have the opportunity to do that.
Neal, you've answered a lot of schedule questions, but to get a team like Penn State in Morgantown to open the year, what is the opportunity there? What do you think that stadium is going to be like, your fans are going to be like for that game?
Well, there's a long history in the rivalry, and it's been a one-sided rivalry. We've had two wins since the 50s, 84 and 88. Coach Neyland had some really good teams that beat Penn State. This is the first time that Penn State's been to Morgantown in a really long time, and it's the Big Noon kickoff. We got the Big Noon show there, and so fan base is always going to be excited for game one. The fact that it is the Big Noon kickoff, the fact that we have their crew there for the Big Noon show, the fact that it's Penn State, it's going to be electric. And it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge challenge, huge opportunity for us. It's also a marquee game for the Big 12.
Coach, you were talking a little bit about the poll last year and kind of your reaction to it. I'm curious how you coach a team through that, because you clearly had higher expectations, and I'm sure the team did internally, but how do you use that to your advantage, and again, maybe to a degree this season with how you approach your preparation for the start of the year?
Yeah, I just think that you use it as a motivating factor. Hey, this is where they see you, so you can either prove them right or you prove them wrong. This year, I'm more disappointed because I believe our best players are being undervalued. There's been a ton of talk about Big 12 quarterbacks, but you don't hear Garrett Greene mentioned. And if you look at his numbers, and you just put his numbers compared to some of these other guys that are getting talked about, and you hit the names, like his would be really, really favorable. And so, and you talk about Wyatt Miley, I really feel like he's got a chance to be the best tackle in our conference. He's been a little under radar. He didn't make first team all conference last year, which is shocking to me. Haven't get over the sack in 2 years. Like, how do you not make first team all conference? That makes sense to me. You look at Sean Martin, who's been playing for a long time, Aubrey Burks. For those guys not to have recognition, is I really think is a slap in the face. And so, like, to me, this year it's not as much about our team, even though I think we're better than that. It's more about the individuals being undervalued and not seeing what they've done so far in their career.
You mentioned the communication part. Have you figured that out yet with your defense? What you're going to do there?
Yeah, you talking about the?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got two good plans. The hard thing about this, and I don't want to say it too much because I'm not sure that everybody's really putting a whole lot of thought into it, but in the NFL, you don't have as much personnel substitutions, and you only can have one guy on the field, and so you got to have multiple helmets. There's going to be a huge burden on your equipment staff, and so that's what's not getting talked about in special teams plays, because you got to have backup guys, but they got to have different helmets, and so there's a lot of those logistics that we're going to have to work through during practice.
You can't switch those out either, right? You got to have specific helmets with communication. Right?
Yeah. So once you got helmets with the mic in, or with the speaker, or with the mic in, not mic, but whatever, the speaker in it.
Yeah.
You have mic with the speaker, and you have helmets with the speaker and helmets without, but you can't change the speaker during a game.
How did it go in the spring? Are you pretty happy with it?
Yeah. So it's a growing process. I wouldn't use the word happy. I just think we're better than we were at the start, right? So we've got to continue to do it. You got to manage your practices, because it goes off at 15, and we didn't have that technology in the spring where it goes off, and so if you're not careful, you're talking past 15 on both sides of the ball. So you got to be more disciplined in that. But it's good overall. It's good, but there's a bunch of challenges that go along with it.
Will you talk to him? Would that be their coordinator?
No, that'd be me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you said defense options.
I'll just talk to the quarterbacks.
Okay. Defensively, I don't know who it would be. I mean, Aubrey knows a lot. He's in line.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be you train multiple people how to do it, and then it's going to be really opponent driven. Because it's really about communicating your adjustments. So defensively, so you really want it to be a linebacker or a secondary person.
Yeah.
So it really depends kind of who you're doing, who you're playing, how you're going to communicate, where the most difficult communication is. And so that's where the thought process. So you train multiple guys, but it's going to be your safeties, your linebackers.
Last year you kind of drew the parallel to TCU about how they went from here to here, right?
Yeah.
And you made some good points that proved to be true about guys in your roster improved.
Yeah.
They made a leap, and that's kind of what happened. I'm imagining you looked into how do you go from there to there now too. Are there teams you look at that went from a 9-win to an 11-win season, or are there values that you think are important?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of teams that have made the jump from 9 to 11. I haven't really focused on individual teams, but I think that's more prevalent, right?
Yeah.
I think more of what we focused on is, you really break down what went well and what didn't go as well last year, right? And so there's things that we have to sustain. And so if you start thinking about it defensively, what do we need to sustain? Well, first thing is we got to be able to continue to play the run at a high level. We also want to continue being one of the top teams in the leagues in sacks and TFLs. Okay, we've got to sustain those. Well, what are the improvement areas? Well, first play of the series, we got to be better. Our red zone touchdown percentage, got to be better on defense. Then we've got to create more takeaways, because our turnover margin was good, but we didn't force a whole lot of takeaways. Offensively, what do we do well? Well, our rush offense was obviously really well. We were really good in short yardage situations. We had a bunch of explosive plays, so we got to continue to be good at that, but at the same time, is our completion percentage got to be better. That's an improvement. Our third downs, especially on third and medium, and then our red zone touchdown percentage, we've got to be really good at And so to me, what we've really talked about within our program is we don't have to make these quantum leaps. We got to make marginal improvement in all areas. And when I say marginal, I mean small improvements. We just got to be a little bit better. And if we can do that and continue to play the game the right way, then that's going to give us an opportunity to make that jump.
How did you land on being better on the first play of the series? It's very specific.
Yeah, well, if you look at it, so that's something we track. We've tracked it for a long time offensively. We were one of the better teams in the country last year on the very first play of the series. Defensively, we weren't as good. And so one stat that we look at a lot is 3 and outs are huge, right? Well, and the first play is a good indicator whether you're going to have multiple first downs. So we're really evaluating ourselves and how can we be better on the first play of a defensive series.
And we've really been working on that since January, and we put a lot of time into it. We did a lot of drills in spring where it's first play and how to create that and those type of things.
Can I hit you with a non-football question?
Yep.
JJ Weatherholt is going to be top 10 MLB draft pick likely here this weekend. I know you've come out and watched him a good bit here over the last couple of years. Just your thoughts on JJ, what he's meant to kind of WVU, and just, I mean, I know you know baseball, so what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's a phenomenal story from a guy from Mars High School in the Pittsburgh area, only Power 4, Power 5 offer at the time, to come in and establish himself over his time in Morgantown. And then even more so this year, coming back from a major hamstring issue to really establish himself, take him to the Super Regional. And I've had an opportunity to be around him in non-football settings. Phenomenal kid, like so fired up for him, well deserving of all the accolades he's getting. Hope he goes number one. You know, what a great story.
We got time for one more question.
Your travel, you kind of touched on it earlier. I wanted to ask you about it, but like you have 2 new stops, and they're very different, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you bus to Cincinnati, you're jumping out bus in Arizona, but like you're at the mercy of the kickoff time. Logistics are different. You're at to do this a bunch of times. Like if you started, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Looking at what it's going to be like and what changes. I hadn't even thought about getting earlier, staying late, but that might be a necessity.
So the Arizona one's where you spend a lot of time, because in your kick time is going to determine what you're going to do. Now we're fortunate we have a bye week after, so it's not as critical. But the decision to go out early or whether we're staying late really goes back to what time the game's going to be. But you have to think about that.
Sure.
And then Cincinnati, what we're going to do is we're going to drive over and then we'll fly back. And the reason we're going to do that is I like breaking that trip up. It's a really short flight. Doesn't necessarily make sense to fly it. And there's some opportunities. We'll probably stop and practice and break the trip up. And honestly, it'll be easier on our big guys to do it that way. And so that's how we're going to handle that trip.
Why would you go early to Arizona?
Well, it depends. It depends when your kick time.
You have it at 9 a.m. there, or 10 a.m. I guess.
You could. You know,
do you even know that yet?
No, we won't know it until 2 weeks out.
No, is that even an option? I'm saying, like.
Yeah. So.
Will they play
Arizona? I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know because they got. I mean, our time slots are our time slots. You know, for Eastern, it's you get 12, 3:30. And
that'll be a big game too.
Yeah, and so I don't know. You know, that's why. Like we've got both of them. So what we do during May is we kind of go through our schedule and kind of make our travel plans in May. This is how we want to do it. And okay, if it's a 12 o'clock game, this is what we're going to do. If it's a 7:30 game, this is what we're going to do. And so you have, and then you just got to put your plan into place once you're 2 weeks out and you find a game.
Right.
You know, like that's kind of how we treat it.
You'll stop